Welcome to Grit and Gravitas with Ann and Annie, bringing you savvy, spirited stories of success. We're excited to deliver 30 minutes of inspiration, impact, and goodness. We'll be bringing you guests and friends from around the country who have very special work and personal journeys. I'm Ann Deeter Gallaher, your co-host with Annie Carnathan, and this is Grit and Gravitas. Let's go! It's going to be an awesome high gear day. Dr. Oralia Garcia Dominic. How did I do?
You did extremely well. Round of applause.
3 for 3.
3 for 3.
Yes.
Off to a great start.
Annie Carnathan, we have a spark plug in the Grit and Gravitas podcast studio today. As we say that about every guest, but you're legit, Oralia. And we came from a board meeting. I started my day with Oralia this morning. I did call her an overachiever because our board meeting was started at 7:45. She had come from the swimming pool and done her workout. I said, okay, this is over the top before our day began. So kudos. And, you know, your whole life is health and health opportunities for others, especially minority and disadvantaged populations. But kudos for reminding me that I should probably get out and do something like that too.
Now's the time, and you basically have the pull to yourself.
Right.
You know,
of course you do.
Of
course you do.
My lifestyle may change a little bit.
So Oralia has such a depth of experience and knowledge. You can't talk to her at any event, Annie, without walking away thinking you're very unaccomplished, or you really have to sign up for more things to sit wherever she sits. And I've had the distinct privilege of serving with you on the Salvation Army Harrisburg board, but in many other women's organizations, Business Women's Forum, women events, and you're an idea engine. So you're perfect for Grit and Gravitas. You're both parts of that coin. But I know currently, so you're with Highmark now, Oralia, is that correct?
Actually, I transitioned.
Okay.
And I think I took the same leap of faith that most of your previous guests have taken. And that is to accept the fact that you might be able to do more, be more. And you might be able to do something that says lead. And lead beyond just your area or your department, but maybe lead an organization. Lead your company.
So that's a business vitamin. We've just started off with do more, be more, and you might consider leadership.
Correct. And when you do, I know that all of us spend a very strong have a strong track record of informing and advising the C-suite. Mm-hmm. And most of us are, right? But we get so comfy in huge Fortune 500 companies, which I love to be part of and have been very fortunate to be to be a part of. But you also end up at the point to say, one day I want to lead this. And you know there's only one president in every company, right? You have 50,000 employees, 100 million employees. But that's sometimes the seat you want.
Right.
At least I know I wanted it.
Right.
And so now I am the founder and the president of the National Institute of Rural and Minority Health.
I love that. I saw it on your LinkedIn. I love that. Yes. Tell us a little bit about that.
So that organization was allowed to create a platform to bring individuals that are innovative thinkers, but more importantly are the think tank.
Great.
And across industry.
And this is across the country, or is this Pennsylvania?
Well, I'm proud to say that I live in Pennsylvania. I live in Hershey. And I housed it where I find my footprints and my neighborhood, right? So it is in Pennsylvania. But I did know that on many things and on many fronts, we lead the country on many things. And I've decided that instead of having the Pennsylvania Institute of Rural and Minority Health, I said, I want the nation. I want all 50 states, all of its territories.
That's another business item. I want the nation. There you go. Yes. Good.
And I then said it'll be, well, obviously it wasn't just one woman. There were 5 of us, 4 men and 1 woman. But the woman said it'll be the National Institute of Rural and Minority Health, including its territories. So when you think of Puerto Rico and you think of Alaska, Hawaii, and everything else that bears our geographic presence. So we founded this to bring think tanks, and really just for 2 reasons. 1, to improve the best outcome we can achieve. rather it would be a policy or rather it be a blood sugar.
Right,
From individual
right.
level to a system level. The second is none of us are an island on our own, or that we work in
Right,
isolation,
right,
these
right.
silos. So the vision is to break down those silos, and let's bring everyone with an all hands on deck approach to the table. Although I really like the sofa, so bring them to the sofa per se, and everyone uses their strengths to contribute to a solution that is evidence based, data driven, and scalable.
Your language. Annie's in the data-driven business, so
Right.
that's
Most definitely.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what was the most difficult thing to do taking that leap? So, you had comfort, you had meaning, you were leading to a large extent. Why the leap? I understand that, but what was the most what was your hesitation to do that?
The hesitation to lead it as in this is what I do full time in a sense, as opposed to working for Fortune 500 companies where you have your wonderful retirements and you have all your
Right,
benefits
right.
and everything else.
so you have a lot of
is
risk in this.
that
Right.
I think what happens is that there's a point in a woman's life or any person's life to say you either trust the product you built or you don't. And you can talk as much as you want of how great it is. But you're going to have to take that first step, a baby step. And if you built it the way you think you did, it's time to do the beta testing.
Yeah.
It's
And
time to
you're the
step out.
product.
Yeah.
And
Right?
I am in a sense I'm a product, right? But another thing that why did I do it is because the need for addressing racial and ethnic minority, rural, white,
Right,
non-minority populations, right? The time is now. We are in the point of recovery from something that has hit us since 100 years ago. I
Right.
think may have been the comparison as to when's the last time we ever faced this pandemic that went to the global level. And we quickly reached out that there has to be resources taken to the communities. There has to be not just resources, but resources that are meaningful for the community. So I can drop you off the greatest present with the biggest box in it. If it's the wrong size, a
Right.
shoe, if it's the wrong, it's thank you, but it's sort of meaningless. So as I spent my last 4.5 years, like all of us did, we had to start a new day. We had to start a new approach. And part of that new approach was to say, I wish there was something that was built for such a time as this, that it'd be translatable. And then I said, I wish it was like a think tank that if I need to know for effective communication, you are my guru, right? You are my woman in high gear that set the standard, right? When it comes to clear communication, if I only had a think tank, and I went like, a think tank? Wait, I have the think tank. What am I thinking about? The same thing I was desiring, I did a decade ago.
Yeah.
So that is where the hardest thing to do is that you start to trust that in the direction that you're moving things, in the needle, in the right direction, that if you had a vision that you can improve outcomes, and maybe not outcomes for miracles, I'm not a miracle worker, okay, but I do know that there are some evidence-based strategies that can at least help you from getting worse.
But
And
I love
from
that you
that
saw the
perspective-
problem and then you
And we
said,
took
I'm
that.
going to be a part of the solution. And then you
Correct.
found the people that are going to follow you and be part of that
Yes.
table.
And I also learned that one person is still in isolation, right? You're working on your own. 3 is good because 3 also teaches us it's almost like a braid, a cord with 3 strands
Right.
is not easily broken and so forth. And you also have odd number, which means
Right.
if there's a vote or whatever, you don't have even.
Yes.
But I also realized that the intersections between healthcare and policy and people and where they work and where they worship and where they entertain and where they
Yeah.
age, etc. We need experts in each of those intersections. So in 2024, I learned 3 things. Don't be afraid to trust what you've made. The second thing I've learned is make sure you refine it if indeed it is off track,
Yeah.
just a little bit. Do your refinement.
Yeah.
Not on an annual basis like we do most reviews. I would do refinement on a daily basis, in a sense, depending how much you're interacting with the
Right.
outcome. And then the third thing is that when you build things and you have the vision and you know that's the direction, you can trust it. And I have evidence-based approaches, and I know that this vehicle that was built with Think Tank, it was translatable during pandemics, and it's still now post. So that gives me the greatest
awesome.
satisfaction
Yeah.
that, wow, in your case, you see something posted, you see something created. It allows someone to take action for that uptake.
Mm-hmm.
And that's no different in the work that we do in healthcare, right? Either advocate for yourself or advocate for others. And to know that that vision was right on point for
Yeah.
such a time as this. So that is why I was excited. And we decided that we were going to expand and invite others to join our think tank.
And I think when you committed to that, you were all in.
For whatever reason in my life, it's always been an all or none.
I'm
There,
shocked.
we've said this, Oralia, right?
We are shocked. This is like, there's this door that no one has opened and everything. And if you like for it, you may be the first of it to enter it, or
Because there's no plan B. If you're focused 100% on making that succeed, you can't be looking back, looking to the side, looking for the trap door, because you know the challenge that you're facing. It has to be all in.
It requires you to be to have unwavering
Exactly.
dedication,
Belief,
unwavering leap,
Yeah.
unwavering faith as well. And it allows you then to reach a point in your life that you can look back and say, been there, done that. That did not work well. That worked extremely well. What I remember the most that so and so said, did, whichever, all that historical data, if you will, can be used to inform your next step. So this all or none, I am very strategic sometimes, and I am a risk taker, but it's a calculated risk. So what is the likelihood that if I were to go forward through that door and I would need a marketing person? I am not a marketing person. So that's not my area of expertise. I know marketing.
Right.
Because I know if I bought something, it worked. If I don't, then that means maybe it was whichever. But I am smart enough to have learned that I do not stand alone.
Yeah.
And when I go forward, it's that type of confidence that I can say, my think tank and that you come. And if you are gracious enough to just be authentic, to realize that you don't have to know it all.
Right.
But you certainly have to be surrounded with the people that you need to know, that can join you either to strengthen you or to anchor you, to either remind you it's time to fly. And, and if they clip your wings in the middle of flight, guess what? At least you flew. And if you fly and you go high, then don't forget about us too.
Right.
So,
And one of the most important things is if it's a new challenge, I think we don't give ourselves enough grace for that. By definition, it's something we've never done. There has to be a tribe, right? There has to be people that you can go to, that you've collected in all the right ways along the way. Yes, the confidence in you, but that's the definition of a new challenge is we've never done it.
Correct. I think when you decide to take the next step forward, you do take an inventory of your assets.
Yeah.
And one of them, if people go straight to their banking portfolios, I go directly in mine to human resources, which are people.
Good for you. Good for you.
And I might be, quite honestly, if I were to say for you to do a commercial for me, I probably had to go and apply for 50 million grants to get the funding for it. When you need experts, experts have to be compensated for their expertise. But I certainly know that I will be able to have at least my first touch point with an expert and say, this is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And they will redirect me to say, that's right on point, brilliant. And other times, go back to the drawing board, because when you're ready, then we'll come back. So I guess what I'm trying to say is nothing's guaranteed in life, right? Yeah. Not everyone can just say, go forward. In Pennsylvania alone, of all households of income, 30% is spent just for a house payment.
Yeah.
Okay. If you go to my place, it's very humble. Okay. I went into the direction to invest in things that when I pass away, I don't have to worry about who I'm going to have to deed things to and who's
Right.
going to fight over these things and whatever dynamics are there.
Right.
So it is an all or none approach. It is go forward. And I encourage anyone that if there is something that you feel that you can do more, be more, even within your own space and even in the current condition. One thing that I encourage you to do is follow up on it. And even if it's just to revisit it.
Right.
The second thing is if you're able to lead it, do it. And if you're not able to at the moment, still continue to think it and see what else can be done based on the, in this case, post-COVID
Right.
recovery.
No, I think the powerful story here, we've touched on it a few times, Annie, in other podcasts, and it might be an age thing, whereas young women, I think when you get to your 40s, you get a little more confidence, like in putting yourself out there. And I hear a lot of people say, I wish we had this, I wish we had that. And you, Oralia, we don't have a think tank for, a National Institute for Minority and Rural Health. So guess what? Oralia will start one. You will always be the founder. You will always be the CEO of that. Nothing, even if it goes off into, other subgroups or different missions, when we Google that, it'll be in your Wikipedia. You will always be the anchor for that organization.
I love that vision, Wikipedia, because that means that you're something that this will recognize it.
But I think
I have reason to believe I'm not going to be no
No,
Wikipedia.
you
but
will be. But it's a statement to those around us. Like, we can do big things. We should do big things. We shouldn't wait for other people to step in and lead us. And I think that might be some of the challenge with a lot of women. We either and myself too at times, wait to be asked to do things. Like, well, I wasn't asked on that board. I wasn't asked to lead this initiative. Instead of saying, hey, you gathered a couple people around you, men and women, accomplished, from different industries, I'm sure, and just said, here's a goal, a mission. I believe we could bring our resources together and support. How about you join me? So you're actually like the, commander of the army, and you're saying, is anyone going to march behind me and join me in this?
And I think from a army perspective, you think you're on a battleground. Okay, at times you're just taking a place where you're taking refuge,
Right.
and you're in a safe zone.
Right.
And so some of these defenses that we put up to say, I want to do this, but it has to be a big thing, and I'm going to wait until it happens. 99% of anything I've done, I never thought it'd be big. It started as something small,
That's a good
something
point, too.
that I
Yeah.
thought that I could maybe help or improve. And I'll give you a concrete example. Okay, I'm trying to increase colorectal cancer screening among vulnerable populations. They happen to have had late-stage diagnosis. We have a screening modality that says we can screen things and detect early when it's easier to treat as opposed to late stage when it's more difficult. And then I said, okay, so what is the prevalence rate and the mortality rate for individuals, inner city, by geography, differences, screening by geography, by age, by sex, by level of education, level of income, rural areas, urban areas, etc. And then I said, for race and ethnicity, are there any differences in screening rates? As there are any differences in prevalence, incidence, mortality? And when I stumble over the
Data.
these data, they were saying NA. Meaning the numbers were either too small for participation because they were not statistically reliable, or the person opted out, or whatnot. But then I said, okay, so I'm trying to increase the groups that have the late stage diagnosis.
Increase the testing
screening,
in those
the
groups.
screening to prevent that, right? So that they don't have late stage. And then I quickly realized that the cancer burden report that I needed to compare my baseline numbers to see if my randomized controlled trials worked, if my models worked that I put together, I need to compare it to something. And those numbers were non-existent for a baseline. So I remember going to my colleague and in the Department of College of Medicine, and I came and I was just saying, I am ready to launch off stuff, and I know I'm about to complete start deploying this. Can you help me find the baseline? Because
Yeah.
I can't find it for Hispanics. And he says, nope, I can't either.
Oh.
And then I said, like, well, how am I going to get a baseline number that I can compare? I need the state, but I'm
Yeah.
also going to granularity. I'm going by county. I'm going by stage of the disease, so forth. I need a baseline. I said, isn't there a burden report for all cancer types
Yeah.
across all 67 counties in Pennsylvania, across all groups? There is, but there's, and then he says, if there isn't one, just create it. I said, okay. So I went and I created a Pennsylvania cancer burden report for Latinos and non-Latinos.
Oh, my word.
And I went as far back as these data were reported and went back as far as 1995 to
Wow.
current. And at this time, it was up to 2016. Wrote the burden report, and not just for Latinos, for everyone. And then I pulled out certain groups so they can
Yeah.
see the rankings. That was the first ever Latino and
Wow.
non-Latino cancer burden
Just
report.
by you asking several questions.
Just asking
Like, where is the baseline?
And it was really an unmet need.
Yeah,
I needed
right.
a baseline number.
Right.
Now, if I was unable to find my baseline number, with so much frustration that leads when you need a
Yeah,
tool
yeah.
and you can't find it at the moment, you have two options. Continue to search and complain about it that it doesn't exist, or create it.
Well, yeah.
And that little baby step, that little baby question became one, and it received so much publicity. Next thing I knew, I was at the at the rotunda of the Capitol, and it was an official press release of the first ever.
But the other thing, I think the third thing, Oralia, is quit.
That's right.
Give up.
Give
and,
up.
and what's so
and
fascinating,
abandon.
right? You don't even
Abandon.
realize this. That wasn't even an option for you. Right? Here are
No.
my two options. It does, right?
It does. And
There was
why-
no third, I'll quit.
There's no
That
plan
never
B.
occurred to you. Right.
There's no plan B.
Right.
When you're trying to prevent something that you can, in this case, some certain cancers, we can't do that for all cancers. But for the ones that we can, we should.
But that's a business vitamin. That was commitment, Ann.
Yeah.
Oralia.
Well,
I mean, it didn't, literally watching her, it never occurred to her. That's absolutely the third option. It never occurred to her.
And maybe that's because you're powered, your knowledge that you're trying to uncover and discover is going to change, is literally going to save lives. And you realize that this demographic has not been studied or has not been, interviewed the way that they should be to make sure they have better access to your screening, and you want to open that up. So you could have easily said, this is too deep. I mean, there's too many layers to this. Too much policy needs to be changed for me to do, you end up at the Capitol. I'm sure you started, with your team, and now you're in policy decisions and access to data and stuff like that. So you could have said, I know that you're not wired that way, but you could have said, this isn't the direction I thought it would take, let someone else carry this baton, but no.
And I think you also highlight another component, and that is, at what point do you stay on track for your project's design as intended? And all of a sudden, you need one little piece.
Right.
How much time do you then go forward for your randomized control trials
Right.
and carry those multi-site, multi-counties, multi-groups, etc., to say, this is going to be completed by 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, etc. And all of a sudden, now you have to create a burden report that may take you just as long. And where do you balance?
Yeah.
Where do you balance it? And I think it's those type of experiences that become double-edged sword. Number one is, if you don't manage both will collapse.
Yeah.
The second part is, if you do manage it well, and again, bring the individuals that can come and help inform.
Exactly.
this.
Exactly.
Don't work in an island,
Yeah.
or as a person just on your own. Then you are able to get the best of both worlds, right? You're able to get the baseline numbers, in my case, of that you needed, but you can still move forward with the randomized control trial to see if indeed that model that you designed worked. And it did. It increased
Well, I'm sure your baseline discovery is also valuable for other parts of healthcare, probably other decision makers. You were not just only serving yourself or serving your specific study or whatever policy or access you wanted out of that. I'm sure hence the press release, other health entities would be very interested in that information.
I think that's the beauty of my line of work, or anyone that's in public health, right? Nothing is in isolation.
Right.
I think maybe centuries ago, we would define health as the absence of disease. Take a blood test, positive or negative. We have now moved the needle and have also taken the stand to change that definition, to expand it, to say it is the presence or absence of a disease, whatever we're looking for under that particular microscope or whatever germ, whichever. And the other one is exactly now how it's defined. World Health Organization defines it, Center for Disease Control, our local department, and that is, it is the absence of, not just the absence of disease, presence or absence, but it's also the emotional, social, and I think they might be using the term now, the environmental health of a person.
Right.
So I've had this
It's much more holistic than describing us.
It's more holistic. And we always use this classic example when you want to have humor in things that sometimes are not as humorous. But it says, what does a cardiologist do? Well, they can have there's a broken heart. And we can have open heart surgery, we can have a bypass, etc., etc. But we can literally have open heart surgery in a heart, right, in a heart transplant. But what heart is it? It's a diseased heart. But if I said the word for a broken heart, the heart may not be diseased, but it's downcasted. That person is. So tell me what surgical procedure we can't for a broken heart. Not a diseased heart.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have an answer yet because there's no surgical procedure. There's no medication in a sense. So that's the beauty of our line of work, that you intersect with everything you can think of because it involves people, and people are people, and people have needs, right? Basic needs. There's also nutritional needs. There's healthcare needs. There's travel needs. There's chocolate needs. The whole shebang. But I think that there is a lot of advancements in modern medicine, that there's no reason why anyone should be diagnosed at late stage for things that we do have screening modalities.
Right.
So that is something that I do have this attitude as no plan B. If we don't have it and it's doable, we'll invest the time and bring the team together.
Well, I think you bring that to every organization that you work. You certainly bring that to Salvation Army. Your wheels. When I sat across from you, your wheels were spinning this morning on, if we can't, how could we make, say for example, our event better next year? What could we do? What component could we add in for the youth that we would strengthen them? So, I'm sure I can speak for all of Pennsylvania. We're better having you live here and think here and create here and
spread your energy here.
Yeah. I mean, and you're, at the 50,000 foot view, but what would you tell your younger self now, if you could go back, in some of either leadership decisions or just your career path? We have a lot of young ladies who listen to the podcast. What would you tell them or tell your younger self of things that might reinforce your decisions, or, maybe I would make this decision, not that decision?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I still am very young, and so I don't know about my younger self.
I'm thinking 20, when you're 20.
Okay, I was trying to think. Okay.
No.
But I want to say what I would tell my younger self is continue to be you.
That's
one.
Good.
The second would be, whatever you do, no matter how passionate you are, be good at it. And there's a difference between being good at it and being passionate. Mm-hmm. For things I am passionate about, those become my hobbies. If I'm not good at it, I'm not touching anything, in a sense. And I remember when I was growing young, I said, I hope I never get to lose the ability to differentiate what I'm good at and what I'm not good at.
Right.
And I think that's one thing that I bring along.
Yeah.
And what I would actually tell myself looking back is you have to take counsel.
Oh, that amen to that.
And counsel comes in various forms and fashion.
Hopefully wise counsel.
And that was my point, right? To take wise counsel. And some words of wisdom that were shared for me is, for example, one individual, there is an antivirus on your phones, and you can, you know what I'm talking about.
Is it an app?
It's one of these that's on every computer, and it's antivirus, whichever. Well, the
Okay.
gentleman
Yeah.
had part of,
Yes.
of developing that.
Okay.
And we were at MIT. That was they brought in young faculty members across the nation. I represented Pennsylvania and Penn State. So we went for this training, professional development, etc. And I'll never forget what he said. And this was about how do you get a job, and more importantly, how do you work in a renowned research lab that's so hard to get into, or these highly prestigious places.
Yeah.
He said, in my lab, there's two things. You're interesting and interested. And I said, what does that mean? And of course, we engaged in this conversation, but he's right on point.
Yeah.
You have to be interesting, meaning that if you're going to walk in this door, it can't be just, I'm just me. I mean, it's just, I want to do computers or whatever because that's what I like. Okay, that's good. But so do some million other people, right?
Yeah.
So what makes you interesting? That means that the person has to go and not be ashamed of their strengths. And
That's
not
good.
be bashful.
Yeah.
Well, not everyone wants to toot their horn. Don't be arrogant. But to go back and share of what makes you interesting. What makes me interesting, that is that I sometimes don't find plan B. I prepare for plan B. But for you go in that direction, which means that if there is a challenging, complex, difficult, blah, 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 those drive me.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Good.
Right?
Good.
Okay. So, but I thought, be interested. Okay. So now it is the interesting. Okay. So you're interesting with your skills.
Yeah.
But what is the part about be interested?
Interested.
Interested means bi-directional relationships. So if you were to come and work in my lab, are you interested in my work? Can you expand my work? Can you come and take innovation or modeling or whatever, if it's even making baking a cake?
Right.
What is it that you find this recipe in this place to work with? And how could you take it to the next level? So I'm interested to learn about you. And are you interested in just the title, the position, the open?
Good.
Or are you interested in my entire, beyond just one little job position? Does that make so? Be interested and be interested.
Yeah.
And then another one is you may not always have another dollar. So the dollar that you have may not need another dollar. It just needs one that's better spent.
Well, that's good too.
So that was another one. And then another one that I think is classical, everybody knows this one, and one of my advisors had said, never stop learning. And I'm thinking, learning what? It's only curriculum, and there's only so many degrees, and I'm crossing the stage, and I stopped learning because I already know it all with this thing. But they also were making reference to life lessons, right? So never stop learning. And then the last one is that if you don't believe, which I think I've said it, if you don't believe in your own product, if you don't believe in your own self, then most likely that product is maybe just on the shelf. Right. And it won't get as far as when products are presented in a way that they are all that.
Just like that.
Oralia.
30 minutes, Oralia. Boom.
No, we flew
It was a
by.
pleasure. Goodbye, everyone. Oh,
How
we're
can
continuing. So,
Almost.
okay,
No, we're
okay.
almost. How can our listeners, Oralia, find you? What's the easiest way? So on socials, we could find you where?
Okay, so I would say social.
LinkedIn?
LinkedIn would be an
For
amazing
sure. Yep.
platform. It is one there that I visit and frequent.
Right.
And I also share upcoming events where they themselves
Sure.
can see. We can meet in person. There's an upcoming symposium. It's a tri-state symposium.
Will that be on your LinkedIn too?
It is on
Awesome.
the LinkedIn. It'll be hosted in Steel Nation, also known as Pittsburgh. It is tri-state, so
Yes.
it's Ohio, West
Great.
Virginia, and Pennsylvania. And the title of the symposium is Rewriting the social determinants of health focused
Oh,
paradigm
nice.
in real time
Yes.
and in the age of AI.
Well,
And
that's a whole nother. We need a podcast session on that too.
in that particular space, basically, we're just bringing all the top leaders in our country
Great.
in health and human services, in AI, and medical use, in specialty societies and policies, in law. And
You've
we're
got
also,
all the players at the table.
all the players, including the patient, the provider, the payer, the policymakers. But we're also learning a lot about super users of AI, and those
Oh.
are the nurses.
Yeah. Oh.
The nurses have electronic medical records,
Right.
which those are a form of AI, or products of AI. Imaging, if anyone ever goes
Yeah.
to radiology, and which not, all of those precision
Right.
therapeutics and treatments that are formulated for the next step for treatment for the patient. Many of those inventors
Yeah.
will be in the same space. And everyone is welcome, is open to the public. We're going to have it in person. We're also going to have virtual option.
Great.
And that again is on June the 20th and 21st.
So that's under Dr. Oralia Dominic. That's where
Correct.
we're going to find you. Okay.
Correct.
And a very important thing to end with, maybe another thing we would tell ourselves, is always make the ask. For the younger people, don't wait until you're 40 to ask someone like Oralia or you, Annie, to coffee or to learn more, or even throw ideas out. What if someone listening wants to start a round table? You're the perfect person to send an email or send a direct message to and get the ball rolling.
And I welcome those requests.
Yeah.
One thing that we would all be remiss is if we're not able to reach out to one another and to help each other. And there has to be not just open communication, and it's not just on a person's convenience,
Right.
one's own convenience. What is important is that you become accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say that there's 3 ways you can contact me. One is my phone number, that 814-574-1850. It's also listed on LinkedIn. The second is on LinkedIn. And then there's actual ways that you could send messages through LinkedIn as well.
Direct message,
So
yeah.
direct message. And I would say 90% of my research were articles that had not yet been published, but I went to the scientific conference and I learned that model worked or
Yeah.
it didn't work. And I would have to wait until the article is published, which may take a year at times,
Yeah,
maybe 2 years.
right.
So I would go straight to the author and I would say, I'm intrigued with your work.
Yeah.
I'd like to learn more. And I know it's under review, your article, but can I have a conversation about that article? Or could, as soon as it does become accessible to the public domain, may you share a copy with me? And 90% of my articles that I really needed, I ended
met
up
the
having
people
them
that way.
because I called.
Yep.
I didn't know them.
Made the ask.
Right?
Good.
And when you make the ask, all they can say is no. And if so, that's okay. You can ask again.
No, that's great. Oralia,
Thank
we're
you.
honored to have you join us, and you're going to have to come back. We didn't even, scrape the surface of your whole backstory. So thank you. Have a high gear day.
Thank you. My pleasure. And thanks again. Be well.
Thanks for listening. It's our desire that these stories will bring energy, ideas, and fresh thinking that you can use today. Subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram, and have a high gear day.